1. The Outlaw Reckoning. It was a crisp autumn evening in a small town nestled between the hills of eastern Montana. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the flat land that stretched as far as the eye could see. There, at the edge of town, stood the old security tower, a rusted, forgotten relic of a bygone era, now more of a landmark than a functional outpost. The townsfolk barely gave it a second glance as they went about their business. But for a certain group of men, the tower was about to be anything but ordinary. The Hell's Wrath, a notorious biker gang from the West, had been rolling through the area, causing trouble wherever they went. The leader, Cutter, was a burly, inked-up brute, with a menacing smile and a grudge against anything that didn't bend to his will. His gang wasn't known for diplomacy. If you crossed them, you paid the price. On this particular evening, Cutter and his crew, 7 strong, had decided to make the old security tower their base of operations for the night. They'd been drinking all afternoon, cackling and revving their engines, daring anyone to challenge them. The town was too small to offer much resistance, but the locals knew better than to tangle with the Hell's Wrath. As the group of bikers rolled up to the base of the tower, they felt like kings surveying their new domain. They parked their motorcycles in a tight circle, revving their engines one last time before dismounting. Cutter, always the center of attention, strode up to the bottom of the tower and tilted his head back, taking in the rusted structure. "You know, boys," Cutter drawled, his voice thick with arrogance, "I think we'll set up shop here for the night. The place is isolated perfect for some real fun." The gang members hooted in agreement, already pulling out bottles of whiskey and swigging them with abandon. They were here to do more than just drink. Cutter had always been the type to assert dominance wherever he went, and tonight, it was the tower's turn. He wasn't sure who owned the land, but Cutter didn't care. His gang took what they wanted, and anyone who got in their way was going to learn the hard way. But there was someone in the tower who was about to make them regret their decision. Part 2. The Soldier in the Tower. The tower wasn't abandoned. Not entirely. While the town had largely forgotten it, there was one man who hadn't. Captain Elias Holt, a former soldier with a storied career, had been living alone in the tower for nearly a year. After leaving the army, Holt had come to Montana to escape the noise of the world. His time as a combat medic had left him scarred, physically and mentally, and the quiet of the tower offered him a place to heal. His days were spent reading books, maintaining the tower's equipment, and keeping to himself. Holt was a man of few words, preferring solitude to the company of others. But that didn't mean he was out of touch with reality. He kept an eye on the town, listened to the local news, and remained sharp. His military instincts never dulled, even in the remote wilderness. When the roar of motorcycles reached his ears, Elias knew something wasn't right. He scanned the horizon with a pair of binoculars, his sharp eyes catching the glint of chrome and leather as the bikers gathered around the base of the tower. He knew of the Hell's Wrath gang. They had a reputation, a violent, unruly bunch with little regard for authority or common decency. Part 3. The First Encounter. Holt descended from the tower, moving swiftly and silently. He was no stranger to tactics. He knew that confronting Cutter and his gang head-on would be foolish. Instead, he would make them come to him. The bikers were still drunk, laughing loudly as they pulled out their weapons, planning who knows what. Cutter was already talking about intimidating the locals, maybe even starting a fight. He didn't care if there was a sheriff or a lawman in town. He figured everyone would be too scared to stand up to them. But then, Cutter noticed something. The door to the tower creaked open. "Well, well," Cutter sneered, pulling his leather vest tighter around his chest. "Looks like we've got ourselves a rat." The gang turned to face the doorway as Holt emerged, standing tall and steady, his eyes calm and unblinking. His military haircut was sharp, his jaw set. The pistol on his hip was no longer concealed, but it wasn't drawn yet. "Who the hell are you?" Cutter barked, his voice thick with drunken bravado. Holt's reply was simple, cold. "Not someone you want to mess with." There was a tense silence before Cutter let out a laugh, a low, guttural sound. "A soldier, huh? Well, soldier, you're in the wrong place." The bikers chuckled among themselves, but Cutter's eyes flicked over Holt's frame. The way he carried himself straight-backed, unflinching, gave Cutter pause. He'd seen men like Holt before, and they weren't the kind you messed with. "You're either gonna leave here with us, or we're gonna make you wish you did," Cutter growled. Holt didn't flinch. "I'm not going anywhere." "But you are." The tension in the air grew thick as the bikers circled, drawing weapons. But Cutter, sensing something was off, raised a hand. "Hold on. You're one man. 7 of us. You really think you can take us all?" Holt didn't answer. Instead, he took one deliberate step forward, his eyes locked on Cutter's. "Just remember, you picked the wrong tower to mess with," Holt said evenly. And then the chaos erupted. Part 4: The Soldier's Fury. What happened next was swift, precise, and violent. Cutter's gang rushed Holt, but they underestimated him. Holt was no longer just a soldier. He was a man who had learned to survive in the harshest of conditions. As the first biker lunged, Holt sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm and using his momentum to send him crashing into the ground. The others hesitated, but only for a second. It was all the time Holt needed. He moved like a shadow, his hands working with lethal precision. A kick to the side of a biker's knee brought him to the ground, and a quick strike to another's throat left him gasping for air. Holt didn't need to kill them. He only needed to incapacitate them. The fight was over in minutes. Cutter, realizing his gang was being systematically taken down, pulled out a knife and charged at Holt. But Holt had already anticipated this move. With a fluid motion, he disarmed Cutter and sent him sprawling on the ground. "Get up," Holt said, his voice cold as steel. "Get up and tell your men to leave." Cutter scrambled, but his pride was broken. His gang was lying on the ground, bruised and beaten. Holt stood over him like a towering figure, unmoved. Cutter's eyes flicked between his fallen comrades and Holt. With a growl, he got to his feet. "You might have won this time, soldier, but we'll be back." Holt didn't respond. He only holstered his weapon and walked back toward the tower. "Tell your friends," he said over his shoulder. "This is my land now." Part 5: The Aftermath. The bikers didn't return. Word spread quickly through the region that the old security tower was no place for the Hell's Wrath. The townspeople started to breathe easier, knowing that the tower's protector had once again kept them safe. As for Holt, he went back to his quiet life. The noise of the world had never seemed further away, but he had proven, once again, that no one could mess with the wrong soldier. And that was exactly how he liked